plus 2s plus 1. And that tells you what goes into this position right here. But more generally, it's this last number squared that goes back into this position. So we cut the 2 in half to put it down in this position in the binomial, the 1, and then we square it to figure out what goes here. Now for sharing, for kind of like keeping things the same, if you add 1 here, you have to add 1 on the right.
Okay.
Okay. Now on the right hand side, you add 6 plus 1 is 7. Okay. And then you're just going to move this back here. Actually, let me just see here. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This one wants you to solve. I'm sorry. So since we're solving, we're not going to actually move anything around quite yet. Any questions up to this point?
No, I think we're good. And I think this is like exactly the way my teacher's been teaching it.
Great, great. I'm glad to hear your teacher's doing it the right way. This really truly is the right way. Okay. So you're now solving this equation, and you're going to use the square root property. Okay, and all that means is you're going to take the square root of both sides. Now, very importantly, when you take a square root of both sides, there are 2 solutions. You have to do plus or minus the square root of 7. Even if we don't know what it is, we can't like make it better. That's what it is. On the left side, that cancels. So you have s plus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. When you subtract 1, my preference is to put that number in front, not off to the right-hand side here. So it'll look like this, -1 plus or minus the square root of 7. It looks a little awkward the first time you do it, but it's totally reasonable for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this last part, like everything from like where it's a square root property and down, is actually something you probably already saw in a previous section. The only thing new here is the completing the square. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another question here, and you're going to see that it's very much the same. Because there's a 1 in front, you just move this term over to the other side. So it's t squared minus 8t, leave a space, equals 5. Okay, and I like these are sort of placeholders for me, like we're going to put something in that position. Now, this time the b is -8. Your b is -8, and you need half of it. So you just cut that number in half, t minus 4 squared. And this time, instead of writing the binomial times a binomial out off to the right, you just square this last number. Now, again, that operator, that minus goes with the number. So it's really -4 that you're squaring. So 16 goes here and 16 goes here.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, so what is the next step to solving this?
So you would take the t minus 4 and then take the 20. Oh, wait, maybe we have to find the greatest common factor, but I don't know if there is one.
Wait a second here. Okay, let's go back up to the previous problem, because this is no different than the previous problem. This is we're at the same line as we are right in the previous problem. What do we use to solve it now?
The square root property.
Yes. So I'm going to ask you again, give you a chance to try again. How are we going to solve this equation?
You find the square root of both of them.
Exactly. You take the square root of both sides. So, and it's okay if you do it in the same line. I'm going to just show it in another line here. It's plus or minus the square root of 21.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we don't know what the square root of 21 is. I don't know what it is. No one knows what it is. It's just the square root of 21. So you leave it on the left side, t minus 4. What's the next step to solving this?
You add 4 to both sides.
Add 4 to both sides. And again, it's my preference to put it in front of the plus or minus.
Okay.
All right, so let's look at 30. 30 is a little bit different than the previous problem, but it's going to be kind of the same. Okay, so this is same set of instructions. It's like use completing the square, use completing the square. The problem is on the left-hand side now. It's not in the form that we're used to. Okay, we're used to in the previous problems. If you got your book or that thing out, we're used to s squared plus 2s or t squared minus at. We don't have that here. But what we can do is distribute in x squared plus 8x, leave a space, equals minus 20. Okay. So what we've done is we've turned a problem that we don't know how to do into one that we do know how to do. So all 30 is a problem where they're trying to be deceptive. They're trying to make it appear that like there's no way to do it, and you just have to make one step.
Mhm.
Okay, so the b value is 8. The number that goes in here, can you tell me that? What number goes inside the parentheses? It's based on the 8. Do you remember?
It's half of 8.
Half of 8. It's positive 8, so plus 4. And then the number that goes in this placeholder is 4 squared, positive 4 squared, 16. Now, it's not always positive. We'll maybe see an example where it's not. Okay. But on the right-hand side, we now have a new issue here. This is negative 4.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is where I guess I need to know a little bit more. Are you in Algebra 2, pre-calculus,
I'm
Algebra
in
1?
algebra 2.
Algebra 2. Okay. So this should have been covered at some point. You're going to take the square root of both sides.
Hmm.
But the problem is, well, what is the square root of a negative number? Like that's one of those like math commandments. Like you can't divide by 0, you can't take the square root of the negative number. But eventually, you may have seen this. Have you seen that the square root of -1 is I?
Yes, we've been using I.
Great, that's good to hear. So I'll explain that.
Yeah,
So
we just started using that because I did problem 30 in class. So I have the answer and it has I in it.
yes.
Yeah.
Now, like we don't like in a separate down the road lesson, maybe we can talk about why this is true, but for now we're just going to like accept it and use it
Mhm.
as part of doing this problem. So the square root of -4 is really -1 times 4. Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
And there's this property that says the square root of a times b is the square root of a times the square root of b. So you can literally separate them like I'm doing here. Plus or minus still comes down. And that's where this I comes in. The square root of -1 is I, the square root of 4 is
2.
2. Now, as like a preference, you'll hear me say this a lot, as a preference, the number comes before the I.
Okay.
Now on the left-hand side, it is x plus 4.
Hmm.
The square knows that. So we're down to our final step. And again, when you subtract 4, generally you want to put that in front. So your answer is -4 plus or minus 2i.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of what this is, because I think you're owed a little bit of an explanation of it. If we were to graph the original function, x squared plus 8x, I'm sorry, let me go back here. Well, yeah. So if we were to graph this, like if we were to go x squared plus 8x equals -20 and move the 20 over, so that's x squared plus 8x plus 20 equals 0. And if you were to graph this, it would never hit the x-axis. And so the solutions you got are in what are called the complex domain.
Hmm.
And you don't need to know anything more than that, but there's no real solutions to this. There's only these solutions.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can we move on to 32?
Yes.
Great. So 32 is a great question for us because it's different now. We finally have a different completing the square question.
Yeah.
So this may be different than what you've seen in class. And if it is, just let me know. But I actually like to still move this number over to start with. And you may actually, let me not do that quite yet. So it's 6r squared plus 6r, leave a space like that.
Yeah.
Now, the next thing is we're not used to having a 6 in front or anything besides a 1. And the formula, there is a formula where you can take this number and you divide by that number and you cut it in half and you do a bunch of other things. Like I think that could get confusing. But what you typically can do on these problems is you can factor out you generally factor out what's in front. Okay, and there's still some missing positions here, so we'll hopefully deal with that.
Yeah, I've done this problem, but I don't know if like my final answer is right because I think it got a little confusing because I started getting a fraction.
Yes,
but
and that is the case here. So your b value is 1. So what is half of 1? And this is where it's uncomfortable.
0.5.
Yeah, or 1/2.
Yeah.
So you write that, and now it gets even worse because you have to square 1/2.
Yeah.
And squaring 1/2, you're just squaring the top, squaring the bottom, so it's 1/4. Okay, so notice I work down the problem, and then I'm going to work it kind of back up.
Mhm.
So if I were to distribute this 6 in here to the first two terms, it would be 6r squared plus 6r. Okay, and then I have to distribute it into the last one.
Yeah.
All right, so that ends up being 3/2. Let me put it in red here. And that's where this gets awkward, totally awkward, because it's now fractions. Now, will you see this on a test? I couldn't say, but you might get a feel for whether your instructor likes this, like if they emphasize these in class or
Yeah.
so on. Okay, so now believe it or not, it's actually no different than the previous problem. We just have to combine the right hand side. So -12 is really a fraction. It's really -12/1. We want to make a common denominator of 2. So -24/2 plus 3/2. And so you get -21/2 on your right hand side.
Okay.
All right, so now we're ready to solve, and maybe it feels like we've done a lot, we have, but we're kind of ready to solve. Now, in the previous problems, we could just take the square root of both sides, but there's this 6 out in front, so you have to clear that fraction first, and you're going to do that by multiplying by the reciprocal or dividing by 6. But because it's a fraction on the right hand side, I think it's better to multiply by 1/6 for that. Okay, so on the left side, it's r plus 1/2 squared. On the right side, it's -21/12. Is this okay, or is it do you need me to clarify any steps?
No, you're good. I think you've just been doing it a different way than.
Okay, yeah, and we'll arrive at the same answer, but it's you kind of have to choose how you want to do it. So you take the square root of both sides, and this is where it gets even more awkward because on the left side, there's this property square root of a over b is square root of a over square root of b. And I don't know if your instructor really wants you to, simplify this, but we can. It's like kind of a whole other problem to do this. So in the numerator, it's I, because it's square root of -1, but then it's square root of 21.
Yeah.
All right. In the bottom, and actually I probably should have had you reduce this. So let me actually do that first. Let's reduce 21/12. So 3 goes into both divisible by 3. And so you have square root of -7 over the square root of 4, which is I square root 7 over 2.
Yeah.
And then plus or minus. So r plus 1/2 equals plus or minus I squared 7/2, and then you subtract 1/2 from both sides. And it's not uncommon to get these sort of awful answers.
Yeah.
Okay, now I should have asked you this, but your teacher, did he have you divide everything by 6?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's fine. We'll do that for the next problem.
Okay.
That way you see that. So let's do one more, 34. And maybe that will make things clear. Okay, so we're gonna distribute in 4w squared minus 12w equals 24. Actually, let me move. So this is where it gets a little awkward for the way you're doing it. You actually need to move the 24 over
Yeah.
like this, and then you can divide everything by 6.
So you can't divide it by,
You should, yeah, you shouldn't, you really have to, you can divide, I'm sorry, by 4. Did I say 6?
yeah, you did.
I'm sorry, yeah, by 4. So w squared minus 3w minus 6 equals 0.
Okay.
All right. Now, okay, I mean, but your instructor had to bring this 4 back in at some point, or in the previous problem, they had to bring, well, I'll get to that. Okay. So let's now complete the square. So you're gonna move that 6 over. You have a space here. Okay, and then you take half of this middle one, which unfortunately is yet another fraction.
So you added 6 to both sides.
Yes, you have to
Okay.
get, just like in the first couple of problems, you really want that number to be on the right-hand side.
Okay.
All right, so then the number that goes back here in this previous line, you have to square this one. And sometimes it is good to go off to the side and show it, just so you don't miss any parts of it. But you're squaring -3, 9, you're squaring 2, that's 4, 9/4. And unfortunately, this lesson is very like clinical. We're not really doing anything fun. It's just like, it's like making a loaf of bread every day. Every problem's the same. You're just little variations on it.
Yeah. And how did you get 3/2 again? I think I missed that part.
You just cut this number in half.
Okay.
So divide it by 2. Hopefully on a test or quiz, you get something that divides nicely by 2, but couldn't guarantee that.
Right.
There. All right. So now when you are on the right-hand side, we now want to make the bottoms the same. So 24/4 is the same as 6. So that means that it's going to be 33/4 w minus 3/2 squared equals. Okay, and what do we do from here to get rid of the square?
You take the square root of
Square root of both sides, plus or minus that. So on the left side, it's just w minus 3/2. On the right side, you take the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so on the bottom, it's 2, but on the top, there's nothing you can do to reduce that.
Yeah.
And then from here, you're just going to add 3/2 to both sides. And there's your final answer.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense.
All right, now I remember why I don't use this approach, but it doesn't affect these problems. So that this method is good for us. So we've really done a lot of completing the square. We could do 36. We could move on to the other page. What would you like to do?
We can move on to the other page because 30, 32, and 34 were the only ones I had to do for those.
Okay. And if you need me to do specific ones, please just say that. This time is completely for you. Whatever you want us to do is fine. I'm gonna do. I'd like to start with 56 unless you tell me otherwise.
No, yeah, that's fine. But we can do 56. And then I also wanted to do 55, but we can start with 56 because that doesn't make a difference to me.
Okay. Okay, it says write the quadratic function in vertex form, then identify the vertex. Okay, so there's really two ways to do it. The correct way is completing the square. And you're taking paper tests, so you may get a problem that says like thou shalt complete the square, like you're going to do completing the square. The other way is to sort of like use some formulas and sort of like get the form. Did you complete the square in class for these? I'm guessing you probably did.
Yes.
Okay, so maybe I'll show you both for this one because it will help you later on. But let's complete the square. Let's do it the way that they want. What you first actually do is you get rid of this g of x equals, and you really set it equal to 0 because you want it to look like a problem you've already done. All right, so in this case, we move the 1 over to the other side of the equation, and we leave a space. Okay, I'm going to ask you to do a bit more here because we've done a bunch of examples now. What goes inside the parentheses down here?
Whatever is half a of -4.
Yes. So can you tell me completely what goes down in here?
X plus 2 squared.
This is negative though.
Or -2.
Yes, and that would make a big difference in the end.
Yeah.
So it's half, like you said, but it takes on the sign. Going back though, because you're squaring either a positive or negative, this generally is always positive. And for symmetry, you want to do it to the same side. Okay. Now this is where the problem is different than the previous problems, because in the previous problems you would take the square root of both sides. But what are you doing in this problem? You're writing it in what's called vertex form. So do you remember from class what vertex form is?
Yeah, it's y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k.
Perfect. So what's different is that you actually move this number back to the other side. It ends up being your k, well, negative of your k. Okay. So you literally, like, this equals 0 is kind of like you're doing it for the short term, but then you get rid of it. So it's x minus 2 squared minus 5 g of x equals that. So I'm bringing that down from the original.
Okay.
So this is actually better. You don't have to solve, and you do want to pay attention to that, because when you're just writing it, you don't have to square root and move things around. Now, I'm going to write the vertex form right underneath it. Okay, and I'll just go through a few things. If there's nothing in front, it's really a 1. I know it doesn't ask for it, but a is 1. To get the value of h, if these signs match, h is just this number, and the vertex is h comma k. So your vertex in this problem, because these signs match, these operators match, it's 2, and then k is everything on the outside.
So then you're done with the equation, or are you done with the problem?
Yes, you're done with the problem by writing this and then giving this.
So what if the -2 is +2?
It would change this to -2 for the vertex.
Oh, okay.
And hopefully we'll see that in the previous problem. 55. We don't. That's okay. But you're not solving. And like, there's a lot going on here, but you sometimes use completing the square to solve. Sometimes you use completing the square to just rewrite the equation.
Yeah.
We're going to do another problem. Any questions on what I've done so far?
No, I think I got it.
Okay. And if it's ever unclear, just stop me and say, hey, I didn't get that, or
Yeah.
you're speaking a foreign language to me. So
Yeah.
all right, let's look at 55. Okay, so same situation here. My recommendation is to just immediately write equals 0. The f of x will come into play at the end, but we're really really looking at everything to the right of this. And so in your next line here, you're going to move the 19 over to the right hand side. So there's a space here and a space here. What goes in parentheses down here?
X -4.
Perfect. What goes up in this other position?
16.
Plus 16. And for symmetry, you want to do it to both sides. Okay. And then again, this is kind of where it's different. You don't take a square root, you add 3 to both sides, you move it back.
Yeah.
So you have x -4 squared plus 3 f of x equals that. And until you're really have got this down, I would write the equation each time. You need h comma k. When the signs match inside here, or the operators match, okay, then you just write the number, so it's 4. But if it were like, let's just say for a moment, it was let's say it was x +4 squared plus 3, then it would be -4.
Yeah.
And it's just that's a rule. You got to remember it. I can't give you like an elegant explanation of it.
Right.
K is just this other number over here off to the right.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
No.
So again, you need that, and you need that, with maybe a word that says vertex somewhere.
Right.
Okay, so you needed 55. What other problems did you need in this group? 57, 58, 59?
57 and 58.
Okay, we'll just keep going through here. All right, so what should I do first? Let me see if you can talk me through this problem. We got tons of time here. Or do you want to try it on your own?
I can talk through this one, and then the next one I can try on my
Okay,
own.
very good. All right. All right, so what do you think? What should we do first?
So you equal it to 0.
Good.
And then hold on, I'm just writing the thing down.
Yeah, and I know I sometimes go fast, so just tell me to slow down, and
Oh, no, you're fine.
we'll
Okay, so then you subtract 37 to both sides.
good.
And then you leave the little spaces.
Yep. Okay.
And then you take half of 12. So you do x plus 6 squared.
Perfect.
And then you square 6. So that would be plus 36. And then equals -1.
Great.
And then you add 1 to both sides.
Move it back over. Perfect.
And then you take the g of x.
Yep, and just bring it down.
Yeah.
Okay. So
And
this is our first one where it's not in, like, the signs don't match, but that's okay. You know how to handle that.
yeah, so the vertex would be -6, comma 1.
Perfect. So what does the vertex represent? Do you recall that from class? It's either the min or the max.
Oh, right.
And it depends on, it's the actually the only unique characteristic of the parabola. Like, it doesn't have any other turning points. So that's all you get on it. Great. Yeah, whenever you're ready, I guess go ahead and try 58, and I will confirm your answer. Maybe take a minute or two here and see if you get it.
Yeah. So for the vertex, I got -10, comma -10.
Okay. So when you complete the square here, yeah, I mean, that's your final answer, and that does work. So the check, and you wouldn't really have time to check it in a test probably, but you would just expand this binomial. You could also graph, I suppose, but you would get x squared plus 20x plus 100 minus 10, and that gets you back to 90. So yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
You're an expert. All right, should we go back to the previous problems for completing the square, or do you have some other things you would like us to look at? Maybe we could even go back to some previous sections or forward, whatever would be best for
Yeah.
you.
Maybe let's do one of the completing the squares where we have the square root. And then after that, I have like some problems, I think in like the 60s and 70s. I haven't looked at what those ones are yet, but I know I do have
Okay,
some.
yeah, are you able to, might probably be better to work on those problems too. Yeah, can you quickly get a snip over of those questions by email?
Yeah.
Or you can drop it in the chat if it's easier.
Okay. Okay. let's see. I think that might, that should work.
Okay, let's see where this opens. Yeah, that was fine. So which questions here do you have for us to go through?
78, 80, and 81, but we don't have to do all of them if we're running out of time.
Okay, yeah, let's do one more of these and then we'll tackle those.
Right.
So the instructions here say to solve, but it says you must complete the square. I always found those to be the more, when you had to do it a certain way, it's like there's no getting out of it.
Yeah.
So the problem here is there's not a 1 in front. Like you really want a 1 in that position. So what should you do?
Divide by 7.
Yeah, we divide every single thing. Now, what your instructor has, well, this problem is nice because they all divide nicely by 7. So if they don't divide nicely by 7, you may want to consider another option, but this one does work well. Okay. All right, so what do you do next here?
So then you subtract 8 both
Yes.
sides.
Yes, t squared plus 4t equals -8. Put a little placeholder. Okay. What goes in parentheses?
It should be
Next.
+2, so it should be t plus 2.
Perfect.
And then you take the, or square that.
Yes. +4, +4. This one on the right is the one that's sometimes forgotten. So whatever you're doing to remember to do that, you could put a circle here. I mean, box, whatever you need to do, but that's key. All right, now we're solving. And this is, again, like if you've doing a bunch of these, sometimes you just move it back over and you think, oh, I'm done, but you have to actually solve. You have to use the square root property.
Yeah.
So you're going to take the square root of both sides, plus or minus. The left side is t plus 2. Will you please work out or tell me what the square root of -4 is?
Yes. Square root of -4 should be, isn't that -2? Or is it?
What if it was just the square root of 4? What would that be?
It'd be 2.
And what is the square root of -1?
Um, 1/2.
Square root of -1 is I. So
Oh,
this
right.
is like something you gotta. Have you seen that? Like sometimes these teachers do like square root -1 heart math. Maybe,
I've never seen that.
okay, it's a silly thing because it's I love math.
Oh,
It's
wait, now I'm gonna remember that.
okay. Good. That was the wasn't sure if you, because you hadn't seen it. Now you do. Now you will. Square root of -1 heart math. I is square root of -1, so it's I, and then 4 becomes the 2. Now you could write it this way, but it's generally preferred to put the number before the I.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you subtract 2 from both sides. So t equals -2 plus or minus 2i.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna go to some new questions here. kind of synthesis. These, let's see here. It's going to scale poorly. All right. So this is what we last week we looked at some graphing stuff, and I mentioned when you graph, you start with the vertex, and now this is actually in vertex form. Can you tell me the vertex of this parabola?
Um,
Can you tell me the x coordinate at least?
it should be +4.
+4. Now the y is 0, and if there's nothing off to the right here, you can just assume that it's +0.
Okay.
Now there's a ton of ways to graph. This is only one of them. I like the table method. There are infinitely other, many other ways you do this, but the vertex goes right in the middle, and then you choose 2 smaller and 2 larger values, but you get the benefit of symmetry. So you don't have to try all 4 values. You just have to try the 5, and you get the symmetry with the 3, and the 6, and you get the symmetry with the 2.
Yeah.
And so what I mean by that mechanically is we're going to put 5 into this equation. We're going to figure out, well, 6 times 5 minus 4 squared, what is that? So order of operations, you go right inside parentheses, subtract first, that's 1. You square it, that's 1. Multiply by 6, that's 6. And that's what goes there. And by symmetry, you get that other point. For 6, I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm going to put it in for x. 6 minus 4 squared. 6 minus 4 is 2. 2 squared is 4. 6 times 4 is 24. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Now you've done that before. Now this one we're not going to be able to draw real accurately because of the just the big numbers here, but we'll do our best here. So so here, let's pretend like this is 4, 4, 0. It's right there. 3, 6. We can get that one. And then 5, 6. But it's it's way up here. This parabola. So hopefully you'd get some nicer values if you're asked to do it on your own.
Yeah.
Okay, now just we got to go back a little bit. So axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry is always x equals h, and h refers to, that's the vertex.
Right.
So your axis of symmetry in this problem is x equals 4.
Right.
And what that is it's this mirror. And I haven't drawn this very well, but it's how the left side looks like the right side. That's why it's so important to get the vertex. That's why it's so important to be able to get it in vertex form. That's why you're completing the square. The x-intercepts are where it either touches or crosses the x-axis. And we only have one place where that happens, which is at x equals 4. There could be 2. There could be 0. Any questions on this or anything you'd like me to cover again?
No, I think I got it.
All right, so really quickly here, how many x-intercepts does this have?
It should have one, right?
Well, so let me ask you another way. How many times does it cross the x-axis?
Oh, none.
0. How many does this have on the right?
It
How
Like
many times does it cross the x-axis?
once.
What about this other point? So this is the x-axis. Let's just be overly clear here.
Oh, right. Okay.
So this has
So
2.
2. Yeah.
But the problem we just did is where it touches, and then it only has 1.
Yeah.
But it's possible for it to only have, for it never not to have 1. The one you're used to seeing is 2. Sometimes it touches and has 1. Okay, so in the time, we've only got a minute left here. The lessons are about 50 minutes. Let me give you some guidance for 80. You want to complete the square. Okay, and I'll just provide the completed the square form here for you. So you can check that later. And then it's just like the previous problem that we did. And similarly with 81, you would also want to complete this. Nope, 81 is very different. I won't even address that because that'll be confusing. So if you have time, I would try 80 on your own and complete the square and then graph it just like we did. You find the vertex, you'd make a table, things like that.
Okay.
All right. So that does take us to the end of our lesson for tonight, Isabel. I know we got another one scheduled for next week already.
Yeah.
If you ever need this, there is an option to reschedule it. So like if you need it sooner, you can let your dad know. It's actually already built in. But it was a pleasure working with you tonight, and look forward to helping you in the future. And I'll send you the notes in the screen recording out shortly.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
You too. See you
Bye now.
next. Bye.